Okay, welcome back. This is our last video on this bag drawing. And as you can see, I've taken it a little bit further. I'm pushing it in terms of getting most of the space behind the bag to be pretty cool. And so like I've been working vine and somewhat some black Conte in this negative space here to get an overall a cooler color and value, or color. Grays that are on the cool side. And I've also occasionally have been very, very lightly dragging a cool gray, which has some white added to it, and that shifts that temperature down really fast. So that's some of the things I've been working on. As you can tell, I've also been working on the front surface of the bags, some of those little tiny wrinkles. We're going to talk about that some more. But before we even get into that, I have some other important things to emphasize. Number one, I want to emphasize the importance of going away and coming back. I've done this bag drawing in a series of sessions. Like we started with a 10-minute, and then I did about 20 minutes before we did the next video, which was about 10 minutes. And then I did about another 20 minutes, and now we're doing about a 10-minute. And it'll probably take me after this video another 20 minutes or so to really feel absolutely confident that I'm done. But the important thing there is not just the time, but it's also the time in between. There's something really important about going away from a work of art and then coming back, because it allows you to come back to the drawing and say, all of a sudden you can see exactly what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. So there are a few things, and this is the other thing I wanted to mention, which is it's important to be willing to fix things even when you're this close to finishing a drawing. So like on the last time I was working on this, I realized that I was off on some of my diagonals still. So I'm going to work, one of the things I'm going to work on for this drawing is I'm going to work on changing this diagonal, changing this one just a little bit more, bringing it a little bit closer to horizontal. So I'm going to be changing these two angles just a little bit. And then also bringing this in. I feel like this is sticking out a little bit too much. So we're going to bring the negative space in and cut this line in. Probably about that much, which will bring the bag, like this side of the bag, to lean in a little bit more, and will also therefore make the whole bag feel a little bit straighter. When you're working on a drawing, it's necessary sometimes to really just take some time to look and ask yourself, what's wrong? There's almost always something wrong with a drawing, no matter how far along you are on it, no matter how good your effort has been on it, there's almost always something wrong with drawing. So asking yourself the question, what's wrong, can be very revealing. There's my cloth. So I'm going to bring that in a little bit, trying my best to kind of keep the value as well as the temperature color of this area kind of consistent. So I'm going to work on that for a while. Might not be able to finish that in this session today to get this right. I'm going to have to also come back in and bring some more warmth up here. Let's see. Might be able to, this area up there. A little bit more warmth up there. One of the things you noticed is, and here's another thing I want to talk about, which is working on the front side of the bag. I do most of my drawing for these little tiny kind of wrinkles, right, I do most of my drawing with my kneaded eraser. But one of the things you'll notice as you're working on your own drawing, or even as you're looking at the video of my drawing, is that when you're working with your eraser, you keep erasing back to the tone of the paper, which in this case happens to be newsprint, which is less intense or less saturated than the color of the red Conte. So it winds up making areas that feel kind of washed out. So one of the things I've done is on both front sides here, I dragged a yellow ochre. No, actually, I think it was this one. I dragged a yellow ochre over the front of both these bags very lightly, just very, very light drag, just so that then in these lighter areas, there's a little bit of another kind of warmth. And then the other thing I've been doing is, as I've been working on these, on the shadow sides of these wrinkles, I've been working less and less with the red Conte, the various kinds of red Conte that I've been using, and more with more neutral tools like this graphite, because the graphite is more neutral, right, grayer, and in this case the graphite is kind of a warm, almost greenish gray, and it works well for those shadows. And by putting that down, it makes these lights look more saturated in contrast, because as we all know from our color theory class, that we see color relative to each other. I can take that little spot of pure saturation out right there. It's bothering me. So lastly, another thing I want to say is that because this is a drawing on newsprint, I wanted to keep the mark making visible, you know, like on when it's all tone worked really, really smoothly into the paper with newsprint, it sometimes has a tendency to feel a little bit kind of dead and flat. And so having a little bit of hand of mark making, of hatching and cross hatching, helps me with keeping that space feeling less just kind of dead and flat. That said, precisely because I'm trying to get this kind of a cool gray effect, there is a lot of working that tone into the paper. But then there's also a good deal of me coming back with tools like the graphite and the Conte and the vine. Where is it? I think I have a smaller piece of vine here somewhere. I know I have a small piece of vine. That's a tiny one. And also doing the opposite in terms of in the places in the background where I want it to be lighter, actually using my eraser as a hatching and cross-hatching tool rather than just erasing really hard, but like just making these very, very faint, light kind of hatching and cross-hatching light lines to help create this movement of light across. All right, let's see if we can fix this problem with the bottom of the bag. Pull that line up just a hair. How close to 10 minutes are we, Linda?
15 seconds.
Okay, just give me a little bit more time. We can go a little bit over. So I just want to show you how I'm going to deal with this change right here, right? that first thing I did was I just slightly erased that, but we still have a little bit of that undercolor that came from the bag. I'm not going to rush to get rid of it all. Like I could just erase it completely, but then I'd have to have a lot harder time getting back to this overall tone. Whereas I think I can make that fit into this shadow. I'm just a little bit careful and a good deal patient. Where's that pencil again? Okay, to sum up the process, right? This drawing started out primarily in vine and just one stick of red Conte. And then over time, I kind of expanded the red Conte. I've also worked with graphite and black Conte. I used a little bit of gray pastel to create an overall more cool feel in the rest of the drawing besides on the bags. I have also a little bit used some color pencils, some red, ochre, and brown color pencils in places on the bag, just to get very, very specific in places where the graphite wasn't quite working. The graphite was reading a little too unsaturated. And like I said, I think we're very close to the end of this drawing. Probably about another 20 minutes, and then I'll be satisfied and done. But it is important to take time to go away and to come back to be really, really certain that you got it just right. Okay, thank you very much.